we have arrived at the last kingdom we're going to discuss this semester, which is our own kingdom, the kingdom Animalia. At long last, here we are. So, typically, when we think of animals, we think of things we might see at the zoo or at an Auburn football game, like an eagle, or things we might see on safari. Um, Or maybe we think of our pets and birds and kitties and bunnies and puppies, or duckies and bunnies, or chicks. But the reality is that the vast majority of animals, things that have been identified as species within the kingdom Animalia, far and away, the biggest chunk of those, 80% or more, are arthropods, so they're none of those things. The next biggest chunk are mollusks. So, far and away, the bulk of the diversity of animals don't even have backbones, which is something that all of those creatures I showed you do. So, if we want to have a better representation of the biodiversity of life on Earth, we should look at pictures from something like SpongeBob, where we've got different types of invertebrates like snails and crabs and sponges and sea stars and squids or octopuses or whatever Squidward's supposed to be. And not so many vertebrates like Mrs. Puff or Pearl, who's supposed to be a whale, or Sandy Cheeks, the squirrel. So we should really be looking at a lot of things like the many different types of worms, snails and other mollusks, and the biggest chunk are the arthropods, pictured over here on the 6 cells on the right. The Arthropoda is the largest phylum, with over 1 million described extant species, so that doesn't even include things like trilobites up here. Greater than 80% of all animal diversity is locked up in one phylum, that being the Arthropoda. And within the Arthropoda, the biggest class is insects. Over 850,000 described species, so that means species that are known to science, not including ones yet to be discovered or ones that haven't been given a formal name yet. And of that largest class, Insecta, the largest order far and away are the beetles in the order Coleoptera, meaning shield wing. You can see all of these beetles have a pair of wings that are hardened and meet in the middle, which is the defining characteristic of beetles. So scarab beetles, you've got tiger beetles, other types of scarabs, jewel beetles, and on and on and on. Over 350,000 species just of beetles, the biggest order. So the biggest family is actually the weevils, or the Cuculionidae. Over 86,000 species of weevils. So that's an awful lot of animals. There are more types of weevils than there are types of mammals that we know of. By a factor of a lot, by a factor of about 4 times as many weevils as there are mammals. So, what makes things like puppies and bunnies and duckies and weevils and worms all animals? Well, here are a couple of things. We are all heterotrophic by ingestion. That means we eat things with our mouths. We have a specific part of our body where we insert food and we digest it and we egest the waste somewhere else. We all go through gametic meiosis. So remembering that gametic meiosis means that as organisms that divide by mitosis, multicellular organisms were diploid. We only use meiosis for the formation of gametes, and those gametes do not reproduce by mitosis. They fuse to form a zygote, which is diploid again, so very short in the haploid stage. We have locomotory structures. They may be things like wings or legs or flagella. Lots of different types of locomotory structure. Tentacles, so on and so forth. Animals move, and they're able to move because they don't have cell walls. In all of the other kingdoms we've described so far, they've had at least some members that have cell walls. Now, no animals have cell walls. Some may have exoskeletons, which cover a large multicellular surface, but they do not have cell walls between the cells. They also have true multicellularity. Even the simplest animals are multicellular, have different types of cells. Even sponges have different types of cells, even though in a lot of other ways they're not like other animals. We do see a number of evolutionary trends in animals, just like we saw in plants and in fungi. And here are 4 of them that I'd like to discuss in some detail, and I expect you to know for later on. Planes of symmetry, levels of organization, how the embryo develops from a zygote into an organism, and the body cavity. So, planes of symmetry have evolved from the earliest organisms, like sponges, which are asymmetric, have no planes of symmetry, to things like sea anemones and jellyfish and comb jellies, which have radial symmetry, kind of like a flower. Remember, flowers had radial symmetry. And they also later evolved bilateral symmetry. So here's a goat, and you can see a goat could be split into 2 more or less mirror image halves. So they have bilateral symmetry. And then in certain other organisms, namely the echinodermata, they have evolved from a bilaterally symmetrical ancestor to have secondary pentamerous or 5-part radial symmetry. Levels of organization. Now here's what I mean by that. So sponges, which are considered to be some of the simplest animals, again, remember they don't have any planes of symmetry. They also only have a cellular level of organization. So they have different types of cells that divide and conquer, so to speak. They have true division of labor. So choanocytes have a different job from the porocytes, which have a different job from the pinacocytes and the amoebocytes. But that's it. They don't form tissues, nor do they form organs and organ systems. Cnidarians, like jellyfish and sea anemones, they do have a tissue level of organization. They have an outer covering, an inner covering. They have this mesoglia, and those are all different types of tissues, but they don't have organs. They don't have things like a brain or lungs or a heart, anything like that. So they have a tissue level of organization. Then, when we get to things like mollusks and arthropods and you and me and duckies and bunnies and all of them, we have organs and organ systems. So we have different types of tissues that are collected into organs that can function together. So for example, we can have a complete digestive system with a stomach and intestines and other organs that help break down food and distribute it to the rest of the body. We have a circulatory system, which includes a heart and different blood vessels, respiratory system, so on and so forth. As for embryological development, I'm going to stop this video and insert some type of drawing to demonstrate how we build an animal embryologically and how that has developed through evolutionary time. 1,